We are Area 51 Coffee Company. Coffee for regular humans and coffee with twice the caffeine of a typical cup, with a buzz that's out of this world. Coffee connoisseurs from across the galaxy seek out our smooth brew with a hint of sweetness in a perfect roast. Area51coffeeco.com. You will also be assimilated with our Area 51 merchandise. We are invading Earth one cup at a time. We are Area 51 Coffee Company. Area51coffeeco.com.
I am here to discuss the so-called flying saucers.
We know now that in the early years of the 20th century, this world was being watched closely by intelligences greater than man's.
Did the CIA write Wind of Change by the Scorpions?
As humans busied themselves about the various concerns, they were scrutinized and studied.
Dr. Loeb, what percentage chance do you give it that you have indeed uncovered extraterrestrial or non-human technology?
With infinite complacence, people went about their affairs, yet across an immense ethereal gulf, intellects vast and unsympathetic through their plans against us.
Prior to your abduction, did you believe in UFOs or any sort of alien life form?
All things unexplained.
So some of that, I think, sir, will save for closed session.
Hello, all you unexplained ones. Thank you so much for joining us wherever you are in the universe. If you are listening to us live, thank you. We would love to take any of your questions or comments. If you do have a question for us tonight, please do put it in all caps so that we can see it. We'll try and pull it into our show. If you are following us on YouTube or Spotify, wherever you're listening to us, please do like, subscribe. We appreciate all of your support. It keeps us going. We could not do this show without our supporters. So again, thank you. We are confident that you all are coming to us tonight with open hearts and open minds, and we promise to give you a good show. We have got our friend DJ from Calling All Beings joining us. What's up, DJ?
What's up, party girl? How are you?
Hey, I'm doing well. Happy to be here. I, of course, am CJ Derringer, the host of the show, along with my co-hosts, Dr. Tim Mounts and Smitty Neves. Hey, fellas.
What's up?
And then the reason that we are all here tonight is our friend Dan Warren is joining us. He has become the go-to guy for all UFO UAP news. Dan, thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you for such a wonderful title and introduction. Thank you.
You use that. Put that on your business card. The go-to guy for UFOs. I think you should. All right. It is a big day in the world. A big, big day. We had the solar eclipse happen today. We have the NCAA basketball finals happening tonight. So if you're watching us, I know you really love us at this point because that game kicks off soon. But you don't need to watch it to the end. It's fine. Or put that on the background. Keep listening to us. Before we get started, quick poll. Who's taking it tonight, guys? Is it number one Purdue or number one UConn? What's your thought? I'm going to you first, Dr. Mounts.
Well, I hate to say it, but I got to go with UConn. Why? Because I picked against UConn for the last 2 years in a row, and all they do is keep winning. So I could choose Purdue and be contrarian, but at the bottom of my heart, I know that freaking UConn is going to win.
All right, Dan, any other thoughts on that?
I'm going to go with UConn as well due to legacy alone. It's just their winning program, have been for a long time, and they will be for a long time. So why would you pick against them?
All right. That's 2 for UConn. DJ.
Big East Brotherhood, of course, from the neighboring state there in New York. So, yeah, I have to also go UConn. It's an amazing program on both the men's and women's side.
Smitty.
I'm going to say the big man in the middle is going to be hard to beat. I'm going with Purdue.
Oh, all right. There we go.
Except maybe by a more nimble big man on UConn's team. And I want to follow up on that with Dan and DJ, maybe Smitty, but I don't think he has much input on this, but he might. Is Kentucky going to get UConn's coach since we're talking about this?
Oh.
I'll chime in and say no idea. I have none.
You can't predict the future yet? I mean,
I'm going to go. I got a 50-50 chance. I'm going to go with yes.
There we go.
Okay.
You heard it here first. What do you think, DJ?
I mean, I would expect that they would I mean, I think it would be really, really hard to replace Cal. I mean, especially not if it's somebody who's like a UK star. So I guess I'll go no.
Well, they got to hire somebody. We'll see. But hey, Ole Miss
What do you
already
think?
locked up our coach, so I'm going to end it at that. Not getting ours. Not getting Chris Beard. Sorry.
All right. Awesome. Okay, well, let's dive into the eclipse. Anybody see it today? Anybody take the time out with your eclipse glasses and check it out?
I saw it for a full 4 seconds because we had cloud cover that was really thick. So it peeked out for just one little bit and then it went away.
Oh,
But I got to
man.
see it a few years ago. We were in the total eclipse area pathway about 4 or 5 years ago. And I got to spend that one with my family looking at it because they let the kids out of school that day just for it. So I got to stay home. I started building them a swing set where I was digging footers for a large 4x4 post to go into ground that turned into their treehouse and play set, and then got to go watch it. So there's significance to my playground in my backyard because it was the day, it started the day the eclipse happened.
That's amazing. What a great story. And what lucky kids to have all of that in their backyard. How about you, DJ? Did you get a chance to?
Unfortunately, no. From where I was working from home today, my job, we work at home Mondays and Thursdays, and I didn't get to get outside and get a clear view of it. So sadly, I missed it.
Well, it's okay. The next one's in 20 years, so no big deal.
Hopefully I'll be alive then.
Just, put it in your calendar. It'll be good. You'll be fine.
All right.
How about you, Smitty? Were you teaching today? Did you get to hop out?
Yes, I was teaching. All I could see was it got really dark outside my classroom window. That was about it.
No, you must have been closer to the path of totality then.
I guess. And it was
You just don't even care.
It was really cloudy too. So. I have a state test coming up in a month, so I didn't have time to go outside.
Yeah, who does when you only have a month to prepare? All right, Dr. Mounts. I know you saw it because you saved my day and brought me those glasses. Again, I only had 7 years to prepare since the last one. Didn't buy the glasses.
Well, I did see it, but you know what though? The eclipse really reminded me of Dan in our chat with him tonight. I think it's right in his wheelhouse, and I want to know what Dan makes of things like this. There was so much leading up to this eclipse, and this is breaking news. Breaking news, in case you didn't know it. I'm going to try to put it up on the screen here. Let's see. Where is there we go. Come on. Technology, don't.
It's the eclipse's fault. We've
How can
lost all.
Oh, wait. No, I do have it.
Abilities.
I don't have it. And I'm sorry. No, wait. What is happening with that? Okay. Either way, breaking news, the Atlantic, so much for the apocalypse. The earth shook. The moon temporarily blotted out the sun. The world didn't end. And I feel like this was really entwined in a lot of UFO stuff. What do you make of all the hysteria leading up to this eclipse?
I don't get it, to be honest with you. It's a mathematical probability that this would occur in a predetermined basis. Like this was easily predicted for the last 100 years, I'm sure. So I don't understand why this seems significant. If it had occurred outside of a predicted path time or anything, that's when I think we should be worried. That's when some mothership is getting between us and the sun and the eclipse isn't anticipated. That's when we should be worried. For this one, I don't particularly get it.
When the mothership eclipses the sun. I like that.
Yeah, it does illustrate the dangers, though, of how easy it is to engage the masses now on different topics and how easy it is to, for people to go astray. So very interesting phenomena.
I just know that I've been eclipsing mounts since I've known him. Professionally.
Dan, you're going to love the dynamic between Smitty and
professionally.
Is it a big brother, little brother relationship? That's what I'm picking up on.
I mean,
I can't tell, man. I really can't.
I could follow up on that whole eclipse in the shadow thing, but I'm not going to.
We'll just let that one be. Yeah. Yes.
It's pretty even, man. It's honest, at least CJ knows a lot better, but I feel like it's a pretty even matchup here.
It's pretty even. It is indeed. Yeah, I was very excited about the Eclipse. Obviously not excited enough to purchase the glasses. I kept thinking about doing it and never did it. And then I spent a long time making a cereal box with a viewfinder for my children to look through. And then of course one wasn't enough. So I had to make 3. And then once I made 3, they didn't care anymore. And then Tim came with the glasses and they all looked for about a second and they're like, meh, looks like a crescent moon. All right. And they moved on, but I enjoyed it. So all good. Good stuff. All right, let's dive into the meat of our show because that is indeed why we are all here. And DJ, I'm going to toss it to you for our first segment.
Dan, I'm kind of curious if you, well, I was left out the part where I'm so glad that you invited someone on who's nearly as good looking and intelligent as me. And the reason I'm getting this shot in now is because I promise you, Dan will take shots at me as the show goes on. He does every time. So, and they're very well timed as well. I don't even see him coming really. Anyway, no, Dan, all kidding aside, I'm curious if you were to encapsulate your reason for doing all this. You know, you've become a prolific content creator on TikTok and an aggregator of news. So if you were to encapsulate all that and maybe even put it into a sentence, I'm doing this because
I want to be a doer, not just a viewer. That would be how I break it down as to my motivation behind actually. There was a comment that Lou Elizondo made on that UFO podcast many, many years ago, where I felt like he was talking to each and every one of us, but it resonated with me loudly. And he said, get your ass off the couch and get involved. And so at that point, I was like, well, if I'm as interested in this topic as I am, if I want to be part of one of the biggest potential moments in the history of mankind, how much louder of an invitation do I need to hear before I get up and start doing something? So I decided to start trying to figure out how I could contribute to the conversation. And this was the format that I found that was neglected. A lot of times I'll tell people like I got into this because I started making this type of video because it was so easy using TikTok, because everything that you needed was in one device, one platform, one app. But the other true reason is there was a lack of competition. And that's my way to succeed is there's so many people that are so much more talented at making YouTube videos and long form podcasts than I am, but no one was making short form, what I call fast food type UFO content. And so that's what I decided to focus on, and it's paid off pretty well. And my involvement has grown organically over the last several years to where I've now recently been able to interview a congressman in person. I'm getting to go and speak at the Cosmic Summit in Greensboro in June. I'm getting to go to the Contact in the Desert with a media pass, and I'll be able to give like a behind the scenes look to people. So it's just something that's been growing organically, and it all started because I got my ass off the couch and got involved.
Can I follow up though? Because you're starting to get at where I was actually going, which was the let me close Signal because apparently it's trying to make my computer shut down. Okay, so it was the why, and you started to get it because you mentioned one of the greatest events in mankind, and that's kind of where I was going. Is I'm doing it like you kind of laid out in greater detail why you chose the medium that you did, and that you felt a call to action. But there's a larger context here I was trying to get to is that is motivating you.
As far as the phenomenon in general, it starts a long time ago, back when I was single digits and I was a borderline insomniac, laying awake at night, staring at a ceiling, and just letting I've always had racing thoughts. And so that's what would happen. I would lay awake at night, staring at the ceiling, just thinking. And then I started thinking about infinity and the concept of it and what it means in relationship to my existence. And I'll be honest, like it's one of the most terrifying things that you can think about is the infinite amount of time that's ahead of us and the infinite amount of time that's behind us. How does that work? But then I started thinking about the infinite amount of space around us. If it is infinite, I can't say I know for sure. But then I started thinking about, is it really that empty? Is it really just us? And so then that's when you start thinking about, well, maybe there's another version of us somewhere out there. And how would they communicate with us if that's what they wanted to do? And is that's where the UFO phenomena started creeping in. I always tell people, like, I think the most credible UFO documentary is probably the Transformers Hasbro version from the 1980s, because they are autonomous mechanical beings with sentient intelligence and consciousness inside of them, and they came to Earth and visited. So that's what I think the first round of aliens would probably be, is a transformer of some sort.
Thank you.
It's what we sent to Mars. I mean, we sent a probe that turned into a helicopter.
Awesome. That's true. Yeah, that's absolutely true. And Dan, forgive me, I didn't share with everybody when we started, but the name of your TikTok and your brand and your Instagram is the 5th pillar of emphasis, right?
Correct.
Okay. And that came from Lou Elizondo as well?
That's another hat tip to Lou Elizondo. He came out and listed 5 pillars of emphasis. There's nothing we can do about the 4 first ones: legislative engagement, senior executive engagement, academic engagement, and then I want to say it's like global engagement. The 5th pillar of emphasis is engaging the masses, engaging the public. And I always tell people, you are one of the people that can contribute to the 5th pillar of emphasis. You can engage with the masses in whatever way, shape, or form you choose. And the upwelling of support, the rising tide will lift all boats kind of approach to making this moment that we're experiencing in mankind's history more prevalent in everyone's thinking and day-to-day activities. Like, if you just speak your voice is going to resonate with someone that mine won't. CJ, you're a mother. I'm not. There are mothers out there that are going to go, what is she talking about? They're not going to resonate with me
all the time.
Yeah. So we each need to use our voice to contribute to this conversation. And I always say, like, the UFO topic has a relatability problem. I only am vocal on this world because I felt like I could relate to Ben and Joe from UFO Garage. That's what they gave me the confidence to come on their show, because they seem like some dudes I'd want to hang out with. Not everyone's going to want to hang out with me. Some people are going to want to hang out with Smitty. So it's going to take all of us.
About that.
Well, I mean,
I was giving them the benefit of the doubt, but we're all going to contribute. We're all going to have someone that relates to us, and it's going to make this weird UFO topic more relatable, more human, if we all speak up.
Absolutely.
And CJ, if you don't mind me jumping in here real quick, I want to give a shout out to all our listeners on Twitter right now and YouTube. Please, if you haven't already, make sure to hit the subscribe button. We are in a pursuit of 1,000 subscribers on YouTube right now, and we have some Area 51 Coffee Company to give away to when that happens, to one lucky subscriber. And please comment, please like, please share. It really helps us defeat the evil algorithms that are trying to prevent disclosure. And we have a super chat in the house, and I want to put that up. So thank you so much to Christian Morales on YouTube. We really appreciate you. Christian says, yeah, DJ Dan Warren in the freaking house. Let's go. Woo! Hello to the beautiful lady and the other 2 gentlemen.
You're going to make me blush.
And you know what? I hate to tell CJ, but this is a fact. The people that love UFOs, the people that love this topic, this is their NCAA championship game. This right here tonight. It's not on the TV. This is where the interesting chat and video and conversation is. So thank you so much to Christian Morales with the super chat on YouTube.
Thanks,
and I love
Thank you, Christian.
I love getting the house pumped up like that. Thank you so much.
I do feel so lucky to have DJ and Dan here together. And one thing that I was thinking about, Dan, is what you said, that I have a lot of female friends around my age, and most of them don't talk about UFOs on a day-to-day basis. And when I do bring it up, sometimes I get a little bit of like, wait, what? That's what you do? Are you sure that's you? Generally speaking, a lot more guys are willing to talk about it, have that conversation with me. I'm seeing the female network grow. but a lot more slowly than men. But what happens when you encounter somebody that's just not a believer at all? How do you approach those people that think that this is just nonsense?
You're not going to convert someone by having a conversation with them about UFOs. There's people that are set in their ways, and so you got to be realistic. Like I put information out there hoping that it piques someone's interest to where they would dig into it themselves. People are going to discover it on their own, or they're not going to believe you. It's the sad fact of it. If I encounter someone that wants to discuss it with me and counterpoint me, I have to admit I could be 100% wrong about everything that I think is actually going on. I think that's an honest approach to it. Even though I do think, and I hate to use the word believe, even though I do think there's something to all of this, I have to admit that I could be fooled, that I could be wrong. And I have to take that other person's opinion into consideration as well. Maybe they're right. And maybe if I do that, they will in turn take my viewpoint into consideration, that maybe they're wrong and that I could have some truth into and my interpretation of what we're experiencing. So that's what I would recommend, is don't be confrontational. Listen to their argument and genuinely think about it and consider it, and then hope that in turn they're willing to do the same for you.
Awesome. When you are doing your TikTok and engaging the masses, does there seem to be a certain topic related to UFOs that people are more drawn to or shy away from when you see in your likes and your shares?
People love videos of UFOs. If you put on anything, even if it's CGI, people eat that up. Unfortunately, I'm not the kind of guy that likes to put that up, because I will freely admit I am not a video expert. I cannot break down a video and tell you if it's CGI or fake or anything about it. So that's not something I personally feel comfortable doing. I make certain types of videos for trying to get people to follow my channels, and those are going to be the short form content that kind of play on the pop culture at the time. So if you can kind of interweave the Miami Mall aliens that occurred at the beginning of the year, and then turn around and say, but if you want real news about the UFO phenomenon, follow my channel, that'll work. I'm willing to use those types of weird things as leverage, I guess, to try to get more attention to the legitimate aspects of this topic, because unfortunately, the crazier the story, the more clicks you're going to get. But I don't cover stuff that I consider out of where there's no receipts. I want to have receipts associated with anything that I cover, where I can say, don't take it from me. Here's the news article, or here's the newspaper clipping from 1952 that backs up what I'm saying right now. So I try to make sure that I present something that a UFO nerd would look at, listen to, and go, he's actually making a good argument. But I do occasionally make some for people that are just interested in these offshoot topics, and say, like, all right, I got to address it. I don't think this is legit, but if you want to know what I do think is legit, check these out.
So the Miami Mall incident that you brought up, that's interesting. We didn't discuss that on this show, guys. And I only heard about it, which is shocking, a few weeks ago. A friend told me, a female friend actually told me, I'm like, what are you talking about? Because every time something happens in UFO news, I get all sorts of text messages and emails and Instagram stuff. And I didn't hear anything about this until recently. So can you just share real quickly for our listeners what the Miami Mall alien incident was?
Oh, man. I'll tell you my interpretation of it. We're going to split the room, I'm sure. There was a bunch of teenagers that went to this mall in Miami. It's an outdoor open mall, and shenanigans ensued. Somebody started shooting fireworks off, and they called in I can't remember what the code was, like a 601 or something. And that's basically the call that the police department puts out when they say all hands on deck. And so all these cops showed up at this Miami mall, and there's video and it looks like a mile's worth of police cars with their lights on, their sirens blaring, just lined up alongside this mall. That kind of died down. And then a day later, 2 days later, rumors started swirling. People started coming out and saying that wasn't for, that response was over the top. It wasn't for teenagers. It was for these 10, I hate saying it, guys. It was for these 10-foot alien shadow creatures that were at the mall walking around.
Don't be ashamed to say it.
And so that just started snowballing, and then people started making videos saying, I was at the mall, I saw this for myself, this was legit. And then 2 days later they'd be like, I was just kidding. And then someone else would come in and say that they saw it and here's some video of it, and it none of it added up, in my opinion. And it just seems too ridiculous. Someone even said that they saw some kids pull something out of one of the stores that looked like a DVD player and hit it, and it opened up a portal. It's like I said, I hate talking about it.
Okay,
but that's what the rumors were.
But whatever was going out in terms of news must have been pretty believable, because my friend really believed that this happened, that there were aliens in this mall. So credit to whoever made that content.
Well, it's a very similar story. Yeah, it's a very similar story, and I feel like they happen really close to each other in proximity, chronologically too. The Las Vegas UFOs in the backyard that met up with the pistol packing family.
It was that close together. That was a long time ago.
But it's still a very similar story, right? So you have this really interesting story about aliens and UFOs, but it's blended with actual news, and that one was so fascinating, Dan, I thought, because here you have this random police body cam footage that literally shows something bizarre streaking through the sky right before the family calls in. I mean, some of this stuff you just can't make up, right?
I would label that as a coincidence until proven otherwise. The thing that ruined it for me is I worked for Caterpillar on large wheel loaders, and they had some of those in the backyard. And one of the claims was, well, it put down this circular pattern in the gravel. And I looked at it, I was like, that is when someone takes an articulated large wheel loader and just cranks it over to one side, and you can just sit there and do donut after donut after donut. And that's what someone did. And then it got attributed to this encounter that doesn't hold a lot of water for me. I'd be happy to be proven wrong, but there's nothing there that's evidence enough, solid evidence enough to make me change my mind that it's file it under anecdotal at this point.
A counter David Grush story basically is what it was. Let's counter this guy who just came out and hit the media, and is extremely credible and has a near impeachable credentials, if there is such a thing. And
but I don't want to besmirch. I don't want to besmirch the good name of the people, the family that was involved. I don't know if they have any idea what was going on. Maybe they saw something. Maybe they misinterpreted it. Maybe they're giving us the honest truth as they see it. But for it to be what they're claiming, it's just hard for me to swallow that pill.
Dan, do you believe that with all of recent footage and all of the news media's interest in UAPs, now that people are seeing aliens behind every bush and in the sky more frequently than they ever have?
I don't know if it's seeing it more or being, like CJ said, more willing to talk about it. Maybe maybe it's been a fairly consistent amount of exposures, but if you were a pilot 10 years ago and you said something about it, you would go to the psych ward and get evaluated, get a psych test, versus saying it now. They're encouraging it. So are we just in a different time where people are more open and willing to talk about it, or is there a ramp up in it? But I think that people are also, just like during COVID, UFO sightings went up because of people being at home, outside, looking in the sky, and having more time on their hands to do stuff like that. So it could be a multitude of different factors that are contributing to what you're describing. I would think that if people are starting to come around to the thought that we aren't alone, people are going to be outside looking more. And so they're going to find more. I go in my backyard and I look in the sky. I've got a night vision binocular that I bring with me, and it definitely opens up the night sky. It's more fun to do something like that now that you think you might catch something. Whereas 10 years ago, you'd feel like you were just out there wasting time.
Looking
and now
at
it
the
seems like
stars.
there's a chance. Yeah.
And even at then, when you said 10 years ago, if you did see something, chances are you probably, like you said, wouldn't tell anybody to begin with.
Correct.
For fear of and being ostracized or something. So
I'm still not sure that I'd tell anybody. I mean, honestly, I've got to fit in and get through this life. And I don't know.
I've been on Twitter since 2016, and until just before I started making videos, probably about 4 or 5 years ago, I was an avatar. I was talking about UFOs, but I didn't want anyone to know what I look like. I didn't want anyone to know what my real name was because I was ashamed. I was embarrassed. I was afraid of ridicule and the stigma being attached to me. Even though I was talking to other dudes that were all about discussing UFOs, it was still the stigma had gotten to me. And then I eventually felt like I needed to make a change and felt like if I was going to contribute, I needed to be who I am instead of being Kodos from The Simpsons. And so I put my actual face as my profile pic and I used my real name. And it felt like a weight lifted off my shoulders because I didn't feel like I was pretending. I didn't feel like I had to be ashamed. Not using my face made me feel like I was ashamed. So what did I have to be ashamed about? So I started putting my face out there, putting my name out there. I was very nervous for the first month, but then after that, it was like, meh, everybody already knows who I am now. And it wasn't a big deal at that point.
Among all of us, though, I think Tim would look best with the blue skin pigmentation, in my opinion.
The true avatar.
Yes. Yes.
I can't disagree with that.
I think it just looked like a Smurf.
It's Tar Heel blue too, right? So it would fit in perfectly at Chapel Hill.
I'd just call him Grumpy Smurf after that.
My kids call him Grumpy, right? That's their nickname for him.
I didn't know that.
Yes. Oh gosh, my 2-year-old, every time he sees Tim, Grumpy.
Oh, such a nice guy.
Well, Christian Morales chimed in and said, dude, I felt like such a hypocrite. My son was watching a YouTube video about this guy and a bird. It's a video for children. He's 3, and this guy was making fun of the bird for believing in Bigfoot.
What?
That's rough.
Yeah, it's really funny. There are a lot of UFO people that really just give Bigfoot a hard time and just think it's ridiculous and it's absurd and it's not real. And I think Dan knows of a couple senators that have seen them, both from the state of Kentucky. And it's just, there's so many thousands of witnesses. Like I said, and if you're using the standard of evidence in a criminal trial, you have a conviction with Bigfoot every single time, and you have a conviction with UFOs every single time. No matter how you cut it, it's a conviction. It's just there's just too much evidence to say it doesn't exist. So that's my approach, stitching back to what you asked Dan, and I could just start naming off legislation and the whole 9 yards, and then the military pilots, and then Lou, and then Christopher, and then all the sightings from all these just straight up civilians and all over the world. And it's just like, okay, it's not a question. I'm not even entertaining whether or not there's a thing. There's a thing. We just don't know where that thing is coming from, nor what its intentions are.
But that's the exciting part, right?
Sure.
We'd all be out of a job if we knew what that thing was. They'd be done with us.
I got to beat feet though. Dan, it's good seeing you, sir.
Always a pleasure, DJ.
Always a pleasure. Yeah, I don't know what we had last time we booked you on cab. I don't know what happened. I think you ended up having to reschedule, I think, right?
I don't remember either. It's been too long.
Man. Give me a call.
Just go ahead and work that out right now if you need to.
Smitty, no, it's all right. I got his number. I can get a hold of him. Smitty, you apparently CJ and Tim are sending you TDY down to Pascagoula to meet up with Charles Hickson's son and get the real spiel, Mississippi style.
There you go.
Like, what?
Would be neat.
Smitty's first field operation.
Yeah, this is going to be your first op, man.
That's where the squirrel went berserk too, and
the First Baptist Church. No, the First something church.
Self-Righteous Church.
Yeah, that one.
All right.
But
Anyway,
it's
I
good to
hope you-
always see you.
Thanks,
I hope-
CJ.
Hey, thanks a lot, man. Thanks a lot. It was so good seeing you guys. Bye, Tim. Bye, CJ.
You too.
Peace. We'll see you soon.
Yeah.
See
Okay.
ya.
Thank you for the invite. Bye, Dan.
See you, man.
Shout
right.
out to our good friends, UFO Busters, that show Australia, who said,
Oh,
hello,
yeah.
guys. Much love from Sydney, Australia. I can't do an Australian accent, but thank you so much.
Those
Dan, what do
Australians
you
are so good to
believe?
us.
What's been your biggest success as far as platform goes, is disseminating information to the masses about UFOs or UAPs?
Oh, without doubt, it's been TikTok. Like it is a force multiplier when it comes to communicating to the masses, because it puts your information out in front of a group of people that isn't actively pursuing this information. So like if the people that do like your content are watching it, it puts it in front of additional people that might find it interesting or might not find it interesting. But it is, you're more likely to go viral on TikTok than anything else, at least in my experience. But the benefit I have of making short form content, which is typically about 2 to 8 minutes long, is any social media platform will accept video now. So I can put it on Threads, I can put it on Instagram, I can put it on Twitter and YouTube. And so I'm not limited to one particular app or anything like that anymore. But TikTok has definitely been my most successful.
Yeah, and
Well,
if you don't follow Dan on TikTok, you're one of few people who don't, but he's the 5th pillar of emphasis on TikTok. Isn't that right, Dan?
Yes, sir.
5th pillar of emphasis. And this is one of your pinned videos here. And I just
I'm
love
sure you
it.
love watching yourself, huh? Here we
It's
go.
so hard to listen.
I'm just a
audio
normal
is the
guy.
worst part.
I live in a normal house.
I don't know. I think the audio is pretty good.
I have 2 normal kids.
Hi, girls.
Go away!
Hi, girls.
Normal.
I have a normal wife.
You filming me?
I have a slightly odd dog. I got 2
Wow.
engineering degrees for what that's worth. I like
Hey,
old cars more than new
You're
cars.
reverse engineering UFOs. It might be
I
worth
still
it.
like playing basketball. And I think Jordan's the GOAT, but I think that
Yes.
LeBron has had the best NBA career ever. And I'm also completely fascinated by the complexity of the UFO phenomenon. And I believe that we're at a major milestone in the history of humanity that's unfolding in front of all of us right now. And we all have a front row seat as this history plays out in front of us in real time. But hardly anyone is even paying attention.
But I just think that that's so relatable.
Yeah.
I think that's one reason people
Especially
love
the
them.
popcorn. It made me very hungry.
And I'm so
And I
glad
don't
you
even
said
like popcorn.
Gordon's the guy.
Full disclosure, it's not my favorite. I immediately gave it to my kids to finish off the thing afterwards.
I'm with you on that. I'm with you.
Oh my gosh,
kids and
I'm in a
wife eat
room
it all
full
the
of
time.
popcorn
Yes.
haters. What is
Yeah.
this?
There's
I don't
better
hate it.
alternatives for late night snacks.
Ice cream.
It's because I want to do my part. During a recent
Here's
interview
another
on that
pinned
UFO podcast,
video
Lou
from
Elizondo
Dan
went into
that's very
detail about
popular.
the plan him and Chris Mellon
And he
put
talked a
together
little bit
for
about
trying to
this
move this
earlier.
topic forward. Chris and Lou are doing the heavy lifting when it comes to the execution of this plan, including
But
Yeah,
those
that's the
videos are just
video about
fantastic.
why am I the 5th pillar of emphasis. And so I
Okay.
basically
Yep.
explain what the 5 pillars of emphasis are in that one. That one that where I say I'm just a normal guy, that one got like 600,000 views, and that one is so what I feel like short form videos help you do is establish a relationship with your audience that you might not find on YouTube. If you notice when you watch my videos, I try to say the word you within the first 5 words, because I'm trying to create a relationship with the people that are actually, I don't like to call them my followers. I like to call them my family, my TikTok family, my Twitter family. I want it to feel like I'm talking directly to them when I make these videos. So if you do notice, most of my videos have the word you in the first 5 words. So I'm just trying to make sure that that's something that makes people feel comfortable talking about it, because it feels like more like a one-on-one than anything else.
I feel like Tim brought you on this show just to have this conversation to me directly because I feel like such a boomer. I'm not on TikTok. I've never been on TikTok. I thought Instagram and Threads was the same thing. Is it not?
It's close. It is. Threads is the Twitter version of Instagram, more or less. But
Threads is the Twitter version.
I'm not. I'll be honest. I'm not the biggest fan of Threads, but I don't spend a whole heck of a lot of time on it either.
Gotcha. Okay. I know. I guess I got to start making TikTok. Represent the female ufologists out there.
I don't even have a
recommend it.
TikTok, so I guess I need to get on that.
We do. We need to get on
Yeah,
TikTok.
I mean, what? Who needs two co-hosts that go viral spreading, news about the podcast? I don't.
Well, let me ask you a question, Dan. What have you had any kickback with some viewers about what you delve into as far as UAPs, UFOs, alien life forms?
The beginning was brutal. When I first started making videos, you're going to learn that you receive positive feedback, but you receive a little bit of harsh, cruel, negative feedback. And unfortunately, it's human nature to focus and fixate on that negative feedback. So there's people that will say mean things about the way that you make your videos, what you're talking about, and it just sticks with you longer than all the positive things that people say. So that there were people that would say things about the topic in general, and they still do. There's still people that say this is all Project Bluebeam, this is all going to be fake alien invasion, holograms, things like that. It's all this or it's all that, or you're just all foolish. But what you have to learn to be a long-term, long game player in making any type of video content is just ignore the negative and focus on the nice things that people are saying. And when someone does say something negative, if they're critiquing the type of the content and not just you, try to listen to what try to listen for what the message is. Don't listen to the messenger, if that makes sense. Like if they say, hey, your video sucks because of this, that, and the other, don't listen to your video sucks part. Try to listen to the part where they say, because your audio is breaking in and out or something, or your brightness is too high on your video, or you're playing the music too loud. Those are some things that you learn by the negative comments, and kind of try to turn a negative into a positive. But yeah, people will always be harsh on if they think that they know that aliens, UFOs, none of that exists, that you're just a fool if you spend any time and effort on it. Then those people are always going to be there. And I always remind them, like, I'm not just doing this. Like, I've got 2 degrees. I got a successful career. I restored a Mustang, not a Mustang, a Ford Bronco. I got a wicked jump shot. I got all kinds of things that I do besides just
you let them
UFO
know about
content.
that jump shot.
So like, it's not all just this is what I do for a living. This is like a hobby that I have that I find incredibly interesting and enthralling and intellectually stimulating. That's what I like about this the most. And it's mysterious. There's that sense of mystery in this topic that you don't commonly encounter in your day-to-day life. And that's what keeps me coming back. That's what keeps me interested and makes me want to continue to read and learn more about it. And hopefully that I can be part of the solution instead of just part of the population that ignores what's going on around me. I want to open my aperture.
Wait a minute. Dan, you mean to tell me your daily life doesn't include getting thousands of mean messages from people across the country?
Just hundreds.
I know CJ. I know CJ was thinking the same thing I did when you brought that up. So we had one platform seems to be especially cruel to us. I don't know why, but Facebook Reels seems to be especially cruel. But yet we had something go viral on there the other day. I don't know why. It just was very random, right? And I told CJ, like, the comments just keep coming, right? My phone's blowing up. She said, oh yeah, can you show me the comments? And so I did, and I started realizing, like, holy cow, this is like 8,000 mean comments. Like,
they still help the algorithm, though. I'll tell you that much.
Exactly. I don't tell them that, but you're right. Here's one. I saw this thing on the internet, so it must be true. Says every single conspiracy theorist. And I love this one from listener Zach. I don't know if they're actually a listener, though. Yeah, and I hang out with John Legend from time to time, and he told me he's a lizard man, and he uses portals to go to and fro. I know. And it just went on and on and on. So go figure. But there were a few positive ones too.
That's kind of mean, but that was kind of funny.
Yeah. You got to recognize jokes, like good jokes, when they're there, even if they're at your expense. So sometimes I just got to be like, that was a good one, man. You got me.
Wow.
And we still get a lot of love from Australia. So thank you, UFO busters.
Yes. Yeah. The topic is very intellectually stimulating, though. Like you said, I think before I did this podcast, I just thought, this is all just lore. This is all just make believe. I don't know why. What more is there to say than like there's a UFO in the sky? And then once you start digging deeper into it and just the universe in general and astrophysics and what we still don't know, it's all very exciting. And when you do start talking to these brilliant minds out there, like Kevin Knuth, like Dr. Chuck Liu, like Avi Loeb, and how excited they are about the possibilities, it's infectious. You can't not want to know more.
Yeah. Absolutely. It is shocking how many intelligent minds are involved in this conversation. And one other thing that I've learned by meeting people that you don't see on any platform, they don't make video content, but they're just highly intelligent, well-versed people on this topic that have successful careers and are just beautiful minds, just like the rest of us. So it's shocking to me how many people with high intellects are in this topic. And don't get me wrong, there are people with colorful personalities that are also deeply involved in this topic that kind of are the ones we worry about getting in front of cameras more. But there's a lot of really smart dudes and dudettes in this conversation.
Dudettes. My uncle used to call me Dudette back in the day. Love that. All right. For those who are tuning in, we have got Dan Warren with us. He is from the Fifth Pillar of Emphasis. Dan, one thing that we love to do on every episode is our hot takes section, where Tim will throw a few ideas at you, and we just want to get your quick hot take on what you think about the topic. So I'm going to throw it to Tim for that.
That's right. This is our Area 51 Coffee Company hot take segment. Get yours tonight, as a matter of fact, at area51coffeeco.com. And Dan, we brought this up earlier. What's your hot take on Bigfoot?
That there's something there. I don't want to say I believe in Bigfoot, but I think there's something there. I think the Patterson Gimlin film is legit. That's the basis of that's the anchor in my thinking that there's something to it. But I've listened to so many of the Sasquatch Chronicle podcast, firsthand witness testimonies. I listened to all of them. And there's just so many variations of a story that if people are making this stuff up, the ability of these people to write scripts and regurgitate them at will is phenomenal. And our movies in Hollywood would be a lot better if these people were involved because of how nuanced their individual stories are. So the sheer amount of witness testimony, none of it being identical cookie cutter types of encounters, very, very specific to the individual, gives me the hope that there is something mysterious in our woods that's hopefully not terribly scary and terrifying.
Agreed. Before you send that next hot take up there, Tim, for those of you that are listening live, if you have a question for Dan or for any one of us, I suppose, we are going to do listener questions next. So put those in all caps so that we can pull those into our show. Back to you, Tim.
And we're doing our Area 51 Coffee Company hot takes. And I'm so happy you brought up the Patterson Gimlin film, Dan, because we had a previous Bigfoot guest on the show who did not want to talk about the Patterson Gimlin film. And I couldn't help but think, but wait a minute, I'm not sure that you and the things you're associated with would even exist without the Patterson Gimlin film, to be honest. So I was a little confused by that. So I want to ask you, Dan, what your hot take on what we like to think of as the keystone event of ufology, and that is the Roswell incident, 1947.
So the thing that I've brought up a few times that I haven't heard anyone else talk about is they take pictures of the debris a few days later of what looks like aluminum foil, and they're saying this is a weather balloon. So if you research a weather balloon, it's got aluminum foil or plastic type skin on it. But one thing that's there in all weather balloons is a payload. And what attaches the payload to the balloon is the most durable, rigid, or the most durable, strong piece of the entire assembly, which is a cable of some form. Nowhere in any of the descriptions of the Roswell wreckage do they talk about a wire or a rope of some sort. You would see a big long wire rope in the debris field because it would stay together. It wouldn't break up into a million pieces. It would be the biggest thing that they would pick up. And no one's ever mentioned that in any of the reports that I've seen. So to me, that says, obviously they just grabbed some skin, some aluminum foil, and threw it on the ground and took pictures in front of it. And that's how they were trying to cover it up. But the original newspaper release was probably legitimate. And then they turned around and tried to cover it up with the debunking of it the very next day by deflating the balloon.
Yeah, and you know what? I actually had the opportunity to go to Roswell recently, and I ended up at the actual crash site, digging in the desert. It was literally like a scene out of Breaking Bad as I'm sitting at a rendezvous point by myself with no cell service, waiting on people I barely know to supposedly come pick me up and take me out there. But they did show up. They did take me out there. We had a metal detector, and we did find anomalous material in the desert that I'm hoping to do a future show on. And some of it I can only describe, Dan, as anomalous metallic stuff like that. I don't have any other way to put it. It was just an amazing, remarkable place. Dan, I wanted to know your hot take on this. Has been quite contentious, the most recent Arrow report. And I think I have my favorite headline about the Arrow report here. No proof the U.S. government knows anything about UFOs, says the U.S. government. What's your hot take on the Arrow report, Dan?
So I think there is value in the Arrow historical report. It does provide a decent timeline of government involvement in the investigation. But what I think is more telling is who they wrote it for. And you can tell who they wrote it for by what they didn't include in it. If you go to the congressional hearings, Representative Gallagher asked about the Wilson Davis notes, and he handed it to them and to enter it in the congressional records. And he said, I can't vouch if this is true or not, but I want you guys to help me find out if it is. They didn't mention it at all. Representative Luna got up and said, I want to know what's at the end of the gimbal footage where it cuts out. What happens after it cuts out? They didn't mention the gimbal footage in there either. Anything that is relevant to the UFO conversation that we tend to be talking about right now was not included in that report, which leads me to believe that it was written for Pentagon leadership as the target audience or at the behest of Pentagon leadership. And they completely ignored the directives given to them by the elected officials to do a thorough historical research on the UFO topic at large. So to me, this is a clear-cut case of this is bought and paid for by the Pentagon, so you're going to write it the way that we want to write it. Don't listen to those representatives and give them what they're asking for. Do what we tell you. That's what I think that report represents.
I think that's a really accurate description. We had Kevin Knuth on with us the other night, physicist, and they briefed Arrow on UAPs, and nowhere in the report, right? Nothing from any. And matter of fact, the Arrow report and Sean Kirkpatrick said there are no studies suggesting that this phenomenon is anomalous, which is not true, because Kevin Knuth literally wrote a study talking about how incredibly anonymous the Tic Tac UFO encounters with the Nimitz and others were. So very interesting. And my last hot take for you before I think we're going to move on to some listener questions, Dan. You said you're going to contact in the desert. What UFO celebrities are you going to golf with?
Oh man, if golfing is not my strong suit, I'll caddy. I'll caddy the bag for Richard Dolan. That's who I would like to meet.
Nice.
George Knapp is going to be there, and me and him have been friends on Twitter for a while. I got to meet him at the congressional hearings for 30 seconds. But that's the guy that I want to hang out with, just because he seems like a cool dude. I'd like to get him in a relaxed setting and just chat with him a little bit there. But those would be my big two. But you need four for a golfing outing, now that I think about it. So let me think. Danny Sheehan's going to be there as well. So maybe I could pick his brain a little bit.
Yes, Danny Sheehan, that would be good. And did you say Gary Nolan? Is he going to go out there with you?
I don't think he's going to be there. Not a contact in the desert. I don't think he's on the list of speakers.
Oh, that's too bad. Maybe you can get Avi out there with you, or Jaime Musan. Do you think is he going to be there? I wonder.
Do you think Avi Loeb would golf in his tweed coat?
Definitely.
He could sew patches on the elbows of a blazer. I'm sure he'd be all right.
Do you think he's watched Caddyshack?
No,
that's what we should do.
He doesn't strike.
We should watch Caddyshack live with Avi Loeb one night. So I think you're right, Dad. I don't think he's seen Caddyshack. I do. I have to bring this up. I'm sorry.
Oh boy,
we're gonna go listener questions. But what's your hot take on the alien mummies? I have to ask now.
I don't give it any legitimacy due to the fact that it's been debunked at some point in the past. At least some of them. There are videos, there are things associated with the discovery of it that I find intriguing, but I'm not ready for my needle to move past the 50% mark yet on them. And I also always caution people, like, just because it's something that is foreign to us, that is alien to us, doesn't mean that it's extraterrestrial in nature. If you look at the Paracas elongated skulls, if you saw one of those things walking around with a head that was 1.5 feet longer than ours, or however long, I'm over exaggerating, we would think that's an alien, but it's not. It's something from this earth. So it could be just another species or another branch of life on earth that was yet to be discovered until now. And we're just discovering that there's another species that has similar build to us. The Homo naledi was discovered by Lee Berger just a few years ago, and has been brought up to prominence because they use fire, they use tools, they left markings on their cave walls. The Denisovans are another branch of humanity that we only have a few fragments of them, like a molar and a pinky finger or something like that, for us to know that they were bigger than us, that they were more robust than us, that they lived a longer life as a civilization than us. The Boscott people, we know that their heads had a larger cranial capacity than us. So what's to say that we don't discover another humanoid type creature on the earth that is from here? It's native to here. So don't jump to extraterrestrial so quickly, I guess, is what I'm saying. But I'm not confident in the authenticity of the mummies.
Right. And you know what? We've had physicists tell us that the evidence suggests it's much more likely that NHI, non-human intelligences, are just here. They just live here, because it would be so difficult to even control UFOs from somewhere else in space, not to mention the fact of just showing up on a routine basis from far away in the universe. So, and it would be quite difficult, Dan, even if we did discover aliens or extraterrestrial technology, it would be quite difficult to determine that indeed is what it is, because we've had physicists tell us, we've got the same elements and even the same isotopes throughout the entire universe. So even if you had extraterrestrial technology in front of you, it would still be kind of interpretive as to what exactly you're looking at. So great input, Dan. Do you have anything else to say about that?
While we're on that, like, if you look at the research that's come out recently, octopi are right on the verge of being considered an extraterrestrial species that through transpermia has developed on this planet as well. So that, like, the water got here to Earth somehow. It wasn't built, or the Earth wasn't formed with the water. It had to come somewhere. if anything was trapped in the ice and survived the trip here, it would be what populated the earth. So who's to say that doesn't continue to this day, that maybe there's a meteor, right, that brings ice with it, that brings some type of virus or something that morphs and turns into something like an octopus that you'll see in our oceans right now. It's very, very foreign to our interpretation of what we expect to see as far as life goes.
It is foreign.
Oh yeah,
They're very strange.
the way you
Very,
just
very
described
strange.
it reminds me of another movie CJ's probably never seen, the Thing, the
I
classic
mean, you could
movie.
list every movie
The
you know, and I
Thing.
haven't seen it.
Right. So shout out to all our listeners tonight. We're on YouTube and X/Twitter tonight. We really appreciate you. Please hit the subscribe button, comment, like, and share if you can. We're talking to Dan Warren tonight from the 5th Pillar of Emphasis, and we've got a few listener questions tonight for you, Dan. If you're
Before
up for
you
that.
ask me questions, I get to ask one of CJ's movie knowledge.
Oh boy.
One
Let's
of
do
the
this.
best space documentaries of all time. So you had to have seen this movie. Have you ever seen Spaceballs?
I have seen Spaceballs.
I
yes.
knew it.
What the heck?
But I haven't seen Star Wars. Ah!
Yeah, it pales in comparison to Spaceballs.
Was it Pizza the Hut? That was a good
Yes.
Yeah, I saw Spaceballs a long time ago. It's been a long time, but I do remember thinking that it was quite funny, and thinking that it was quite funny, even though I had never seen Star Wars, or it's that based on Star Wars, right? Or Star Trek?
Yes.
Star Wars.
Star
Yeah.
Wars.
Yeah.
Well,
The
I've got
Schwartz.
I've got a quote from a sci-fi movie that she has seen.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick
And I'm all
all out of bubblegum.
So she actually has seen They Live with Rowdy Roddy Piper. So I am really disturbed, CJ, though, that you have seen Spaceballs and not 2001: A Space Odyssey
Yeah, I'll work on it. I'll put it on my list. of
or Star
things
Wars.
to watch.
How do you watch the parody but not the thing that got parodied?
I don't know. I was forced to watch it. I think I just need to take a 3-day weekend and watch all of these things back to back
Watch
to
The
back.
Abyss. Start with that one.
Start with The Abyss. That's
That's the one that's the movie that I believe is going to have more and more significance as we continue to delve into the UFO topic, and we transition from looking at things in our skies to looking at things in our seas.
okay. I'm writing it down just for you.
Oh,
The
yeah.
Abyss.
And
we really
go to my TikTok, because I've got 2 videos that I made, one about the Abyss movie, and then there's
Oh no.
online. There is a backstory for the non-terrestrial intelligence that describes a species that lived 22 million light years away. They came down to observe Earth from behind the moon in secret, and then they eventually went into the oceans where they were more comfortable with the pressure, the crushing pressure of our ocean depths, because they came from a water world as well. So that's their natural habitat. And that's why they thrived in the depths of our ocean. And that's the backstory James Cameron put together for the movie Abyss. And once you hear the
this is a
backstory,
James Cameron movie.
yes, it's phenomenal. And once you know the
Okay.
backstory, it makes it even better.
All right. And now I have to get on TikTok so that I can see that.
That's for sure.
I have a lot to do this upcoming weekend.
Yeah, you did.
Not to mention, we've got Brandon Fugel from Skinwalker Ranch coming on our show. We have an episode with him next week. Somebody had a question in here that I saw about Brandon Fugel, so we better dive into
I hope
those.
you started. Yes. If you can
yes.
star anything that I haven't already, CJ, for our
I
listener
did.
questions.
And real quick, a shout out to Christian Morales and Mandolin 14 and UFO Busters, that UFO show in Australia, all for your wonderful comments and chiming in on the conversation here. We would love to hear from anybody that's listening live.
And
All
I'll
right,
just-
let's get into those questions,
Yeah.
Tim.
And I know you're going to hate me, but I'll just say this before we do the listener questions, because I have to, because you brought up the USOs, Dan, and this blew my mind. Kevin Knuth the other night with me, he said, hey, you know what? My organization, UAPX, we addressed Arrow. We made a presentation to Arrow, and we made a presentation to the House Armed Services Committee and several other 3-letter organizations. That's what he said. And he said at every presentation, they asked us, what are our capabilities of observing are detecting UAPs underwater at every one of them. So that information just makes you go, I think that water and this UFO phenomenon has something, connected there. So we've got a few questions here.
And don't
Go ahead,
forget
Dad.
that we are on a water world ourselves. We are a 70% water coverage of the earth. So when you view us from a great distance away, just like they did with, I think, the Mercury Voyager back in the 70s or early 80s, there's a famous photograph called the pale blue dot, and that's us. We are just a little blue dot in the middle of a dark sky, and we are a water world. And there's more water than there is land, and who knows what we're going to learn as we go forward. We've learned about our air domain awareness gap because of the balloons. Imagine what we're going to learn in our water domain awareness gap if we start looking underneath the surface of the seas.
That's so true. We really appreciate all our listeners right now. And we have a question from listener 2, Jax. Dan, craft retrieval. This is a great question. If they are so advanced and way ahead of us, why don't NHI, that's non-human intelligences, get there and retrieve their craft before us?
I'm guessing, just to make sure everyone knows, this is pure speculation. Maybe it's not as valuable to them as it is to us. Maybe it's dispensable. Like if you lose a Walmart bag, is that going to be something you chase down the road and recover, or is it significant enough to them and their mission to go and retrieve it? I understand the question he's asking, and it's a good one, but I have heard that they have come back to retrieve the individuals, but I don't know if they would do that as a general rule of thumb. Do we go and recover every piece of military equipment that we lose overseas? We don't. There's still planes, there's still advanced military tech overseas right now, and we just don't go get it all. And why don't we go get it all? Like, so that's probably similar to the same reasons why they don't go get it all. Maybe they do more than we even know.
True.
Sometimes
and you know what,
we actually blow it up, blow our own equipment up. So
yeah, and you know what, too, Jax? I just have to point out, if you'll check out American Cosmic by Diana Pasulka, she says that we've been told that some of these UFO crashes are actually donations or gifts from the NHI to us. So now, what are they getting back? Well, that remains to be seen, and that's totally up for some disturbed speculation. Dan, we have.
Hey, this is my job,
ahead.
by the way.
Sure.
But also,
What?
NHI, for people who might be new
CJ.
to the topic, is non-human intelligence, for those of you who don't know what that term is. So, okay, this is from UFO Busters, that UFO show Australia. Dear Dan, have you seen any of my UAP recordings from my library? Well, let's put him on the spot here. I'd love your opinion. Would be super cool.
He probably needs some background on that. UFO Busters, one of our great fans in Australia, out in the middle of nowhere, and they have a great YouTube channel where they document all the anomalous things that they see in the sky.
I can't say I have, but that goes back to my previous comment where I don't actually look at a lot of videos. I tend to read more than look at videos at this point in my journey. And you change over the course of time as you're investigating this topic based on where you come into it. I'm an engineer. I'm a nuts and bolts guy by nature. I've had to transition from being purely nuts and bolts to thinking more along the lines of the consciousness aspect of the phenomenon as well. To me, the videos, I don't watch a lot of them. So I'm sorry, I had to say I haven't seen your videos, UFO Busters, but I'll be happy to take a look at them. But I can only absorb them. I can't comment on them. I can't tell you much about them. I just don't have that skill set. My skill set is based on trying to connect dots in what's happening now to what has happened in the past and what is out there in the UFO universe that we can use to better understand the significance of the information that we're receiving today.
Well, you're doing your role of disseminating that information well. So thank you for doing that. All right. From Christian Morales, Dan, where do you think we'll be in 5 years with UAP? Do you think government will be more transparent, or will it be up to Brandon Fugel, James Fox, or the Bledsoes?
This has actually been a change in perspective I've had recently. And I'll be honest, Kevin Knuth is one of those guys that's kind of changed my opinion. So is Avi Loeb. But what we've seen from the government at least 3 times that I've been able to track, based on the historical report from Arrow, is when they get interested in it, they approach it with an open-minded approach to the topic. The Pentagon leadership comes in and squashes it flat. That happened with Project Grudge. That happened with Project Blue Book when the Condon report came out. And that just happened with the Arrow historical report. So right now, the Pentagon, the government is on full on squash it and extinguish this flame. That's what they're trying to do right now. But that's where the civilians need to start investigating for themselves. That's where we need to engage the masses to say, hey, we want this to be investigated more. We want to learn more about it. We can't just rely on the government at this point. We're going to have to help ourselves at some point. So I do think that it's going to be more on the shoulders of people like Brandon Fugel, James Fox, and the Bledsoes to get actual information out there. That's the thing that I always think about is there's got to be just one case or one event that everyone's going to have to look at some point in the future and go, okay, well, I guess this is legit. Let's dive in. And then that's going to be the tipping point for the conversation.
And we have one more listener question here, CJ.
All right, this comes from Mandolin14. My question for Dan is, what do you think is the best approach to public education via social media, despite the weirdness? Go all out, or do you think there should be a method to the madness?
I try to connect 3 dots to allow people to do what I call triangulate your thoughts on something. There's one data point that's currently in the news cycle, but if you back up and look at that situation and see if you can find why that's significant in a historical aspect and find 2 other data points that are related to that topic, it really helps people understand why that current news cycle data point is significant and why it's not just an anomaly. Like, hey, this happened, but did you know back in 2004 there was this Nimitz case where a similar type of object was seen, or a radar recording was reported? So it's not just a standalone incident. It starts to give people context. So I guess that's the overarching thing for me, is you have to provide context for the information that's being delivered. And that helps to reduce the amount of weirdness, because if people think, well, that's the weirdest thing I've ever heard. But then if you say, well, no, in 1952, they overflew Washington, D.C. and was reported on all these things, then it gets rid of some of that weirdness. It gets rid of some of that stigma for it to have the context that it needs to be absorbed.
Wonderful. Thank you, listeners, for those questions. And Dan, where can our listeners go to follow you?
I have an unsuccessful YouTube channel called The Fifth Pillar of Emphasis. I think it's 562. They made me add 3 numbers to it, and they assigned them. I didn't get to pick, but yeah, I'm on YouTube, Fifth Pillar of Emphasis. I'm on Instagram, Fifth Pillar of Emphasis. I'm on TikTok, Fifth Pillar of Emphasis. I'm on Twitter at Hey Look Over There. Look is spelled LUK. That's from 2016, so I can't change that at this point. So.
Is there is there a website that they can go to and get to all of your others, or they've got to just find all these?
I think if you go, I think I've got Linktree on I can't remember, Linktree on my Twitter page and my Instagram page, as well as my TikTok page. So just look up Fifth Pillar of Emphasis, Dan Warren. My 14-year-old daughter did it at school the other day, and she was like, I looked up Dan Warren, and there's a lot of lawyers and doctors. There was none of you.
Dan Warrens out there, yeah.
Yeah, but then the Fifth Pillar of Emphasis, Dan Warren, she's like, and then you were everywhere. So you can find me on Google. That's probably the easiest way to do it.
Oh, yeah, and we have some breaking super chat here. Thanks so much to Christian Morales for the super question on the super chat, which is now available right next to the comment bar in our YouTube. And Dan, listener Christian Morales, I'll let you take that, CJ.
Oh, Dan, let's say 2023 was 1952 and 2024 is 1953. Think of UFO history. Would a disinformation effort be successful in 2024?
Would a disinformation effort be successful in 2024? Oh, of course. Like, disinformation is basically always going to be successful because you mix lies in with the truth, accurate information with the inaccurate information, and you can't distinguish one from the other. That's just age-old tactic. The best place to hide a truth, or the best place to hide a lie, is between two truths. So I think that it will always be successful to run a disinformation campaign, and I mean, let's face it, I wanted to give Kirkpatrick the benefit of the doubt for a long time. I was really hoping he was going to be a J. Allen Hynek, but it has turned out that he's become an Edward Condon. And as you listen to what he says on his media whirlwind tour that he's taking right now, it becomes more apparent to me that he is just bound and determined to explain everything away, which was the task that he was given, the task that J. Allen Hynek was given when he first joined Blue Book, the directive that they were given when they started Project Grudge. It's just repeating itself. And for him to say that there's no data on the Nimitz case is ridiculous. For him to say that the gimbal video is probably just a jet in a far off distance, and he said probably just a jet and this, that, and the other, and he doesn't know. He's just speculating on a easy solution. And they want to recreate it in the lab instead of going out and finding the full video that was truncated. They are not going to do that. They're not trying. So it seems apparent to me that he's not helping out the conversation.
Recreate it in a lab. The Nimitz case?
He wants to, not the Nimitz, the gimbal. He said, well, if you take it's a lens glare artifact from a jet that's a long way away. So we're going to go in a lab and recreate that thing. And it's like, don't do that. Go find the full video and watch the full thing. It'll tell on itself. You don't need to go into a lab. And I'm a firm believer that just because you can replicate something in a controlled environment that looks very similar to something else, it doesn't, like, you can make a Nazca mummy out of cake. We all have seen those memes. That doesn't mean that that's Nazca mummy is made out of cake. It's not the same thing as what happened.
That's too funny, Dan. When we did a live news show on Halloween, and all Tim wanted was for us to have a mummy cake to cut into at the show. I talked him out of it. You're all welcome. I talked him out of it. But
that was the part she was most opposed to, because I thought that we should go as Lizzie Borden, which obviously CJ is a perfect fit for, and I would be one of Lizzie's victims. So I thought, but she wouldn't do that. Instead, we went as Scully and Fox Mulder. So, and shout out to
selection.
It still worked out pretty good. And even though CJ's never watched the X-Files, just saying.
Yeah.
Shout out to
you need to get on that for sure.
UFO hostess cred diminishing. Shout out to Mandolin 14 for the super sticker on YouTube. And I could tell you that actually on YouTube, it is a little green dude giving a giant thumbs up. It's not showing on here, but thank you so much for that, Mandolin. We really appreciate that. And very interesting. Diana checked out some of the UFO Busters stuff. That's quite interesting. And Christian Morales says, but 2024, we got social media phones and many other things we didn't have back in the day. So I think that this is referring to his question about the disinformation and the psyops, but I think it'll be a slow for people to accept UFOs as a reality. I tend to agree with that too. Dan, I wanted to ask you about religion. We didn't really get into it, but you kind of headed that way a little bit, because when you were talking about your own experience from what Lou Elizondo was talking about, when you saw that, to me, it sounded like a religious experience that you were having. And Diana Pasulka talks about this sort of thing in her books. And I grew up religious, and and Smitty's our religious expert. And we feel like, you know what? A lot of people think thousands of years ago that otherworldly beings did come directly here and give us some things and tell us some things to do and talk to us. And you know what? Some people either went along with it or some people didn't.
Yeah, I'll clarify that I don't think I was having a religious experience when I was listening to the Lou Elizondo comments. I think that was that was definitely playing to my I'm a history aficionado. I've always been a fan of ancient megalithic structures, ancient lost civilizations, and those are opportunities that I missed. I wish I was around to help build the pyramid. Am I currently working on something that's as significant, if not more significant, than the pyramids for humanity as a whole. That's kind of why it resonated with me so much. Is this my opportunity to be involved in something that has significance for the entire human civilization as a whole that I can participate in? And I also like to think about this as one of the few opportunities that humanity has that will then allow us to look at ourselves. Like I'm a Tennessee. People in Cookville know that I'm a Cookvillian. People outside of my town or outside of my state, people in Kentucky just know me as a Tennessean. People outside of in Canada just view me as an American. It's people outside of this earth are going to view me as a human. Like we're all human. We're all the same. This is one thing that could bring us together and help us realize that all of human history is all of our shared human history. We're all part of the one branch of this life form that we know. All the accomplishments that have been accomplished by our forefathers, we should all enjoy and relish and appreciate their accomplishments. There's so much stuff going on in ancient India and ancient China that we have very, very little understanding of, very little knowledge of. The more we discover about it, the more I hope that people realize that great things were going on a long time ago all over the world, and we should all celebrate what happened in the past because we all are part of that same mix, that same line of life. We're all part of the same thing. That's one of the things that I hope that comes from this UFO topic, at least.
You know what you just said brought up a memory from one of our favorites. Rest in peace to Jimmy Buffett. And who's the guy from Mississippi, Smitty, that is in the Jimmy Buffett band? Redheaded guy. Dan, you might know.
I can't think right now about it.
You don't think I know?
CJ?
No, I don't know.
I don't know. Well, he wrote the song that Kenny Chesney sung, and what Dan just said made me think of, I'm an old Cookvillian, I'm an old Tennessean. But anyway.
We might have lost sponsorship with you singing.
What in the world just happened?
That was I'm an old Mississippian. Anyway, back to you, CJ.
Oh, yes. You know what your topic reminded me of is when I read the Book of Joy, which was with the Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu. And they talked a lot about how we are all human brothers and sisters. And if we could all just see that, what a more beautiful world we would live in. I try to teach my children that every single day. We're all human brothers and sisters in this together.
Kind of reminded me
agree.
The History Channel, The Story of Us. And how it just builds one on top of the other.
Yes.
To bring us. Well, of course, I'm a history teacher, so
yeah,
I try to teach how each and every generation has built upon generations of the past and how it's brought us to the current state we're in, and that we can't forget about what happened in the past, or we can't really truly understand the present. Of course, a lot of people try to wipe out the past, but it's there.
He who has the power controls the past. All right. Well, speaking of the History Channel, we've got a big month at All Things Unexplained. We've got Brandon Fugel coming on. We can't wait to ask him all of the questions about the mysteries of Skinwalker Ranch. Please send us your questions. We want to know, why won't they dig into that, Mesa? We're going to find out. We're going to dig into that. We also have the hosts of a brand new History Channel show coming onto our podcast very soon. More info coming out about that. I'm going on with Nikki Starchild on Wednesday, the Alien Girl 111 podcast. I can't wait to chat with her. It's a big month. We are so thrilled that we had Dan on for this evening. Thank you for joining us. Thank you to DJ who was here with us earlier, to all of our followers, listeners, commenters. You are appreciated more than you will ever know. I know that Dan feels the same way about his listeners, followers. So thank you for being part of our family as we traverse this universe together. Smitty, throwing it your way to send us on out.
All right. Thank you for listening. Be happy, be strange, and listen to All Things Unexplained. Good night from all of us.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you guys for having me. Thank you guys for listening.
Thanks. Like, share, follow, comment, subscribe, support. What's your hot take on Travis Taylor?
I've got an exclusive for you guys if you want it about the Alaska.
We do.
Okay.
All things unexplained.
So some of that I think, sir, we'll save for closed session.